Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. Thanks for dropping by. So, this is the book that I'd like to discuss today, The Death of Grass by John Christopher, published in 1956. So, this is a dramatic and hard-hitting post-apocalyptic tale that really packs a punch. This is a story about a huge catastrophic famine that sweeps across Asia and Europe, and the rapid and terrifying breakdown of social order that ensues, which is nothing less than the collapse of civilization and the rise of barbarism. So, this is a pretty bleak novel. It's very dark in tone. There are many times when I found this quite unnerving to read. But it's also fast-paced and gripping and has a very engaging plot, so there's a lot going for it. I did struggle a little bit with some of the characterization, specifically the lack of sympathetic characters and the inhumane things that the protagonists do in the plot. But in a way, that's kind of the point of this story, just how easy it is for ordinary, respectable people to revert to brutality and barbarism under the right circumstances. So the cause of all this unrest is a devastating new virus that emerges out of China, would you believe it? This virus kills rice crops. So it's spread across China and other Asian countries, and it's causing major crop failures and famine and massive social unrest and chaos to boot. And we learn all of this at the start of the novel from the safe distance of media reports in England. And there's a lot of complacency about this virus over here. I mean, people mourn, all of this tragic loss of life in Asia, but they don't really think of it as much of a threat to us in Britain. After all, it only affects rice crops, which are not a staple of the Western diet. And in any case, the media keep sending us reassuring reports that any day now scientists are going to develop a countervirus. And this complacency is amplified by ethnocentrist attitudes. So people kind of think that even if Britain does suffer famine, it's nothing that a bit of rationing and the resilient English spirit can't handle. But of course that doesn't happen. The countervirus proves futile, and instead the virus mutates and proceeds to kill all species of grass. And that includes all grain crops like wheat, barley, and oats, effectively destroying the food supply overnight. And the mutated virus finds its way to Europe, and it's game over. Not only do we lose our grains, but we can no longer raise animals to feed on grass. So agriculture is devastated across the board. The government loses grip of the situation, and once it becomes clear that we don't have enough food to support the population, all social order breaks down, and the desperate struggle for survival ensues. Like the rest of Asia and Europe, the UK becomes a hellhole. So it's a pretty bleak situation. While we don't hear much about the fate of the rest of the world, it's suggested that the Americas managed to keep the virus out of their borders through stringent quarantines. Although how long they can keep that up is anyone's guess. So that's the backdrop for the story, which is intimately portrayed from the point of view of one character is a London-based engineer, John Custance, and his wife and children. They are the focus of the story. Now, he has a brother, David, who owns a farm in the north of England. And David, being a more cautious and foresighted individual than most, manages to future-proof his farm when he saw this crisis coming by switching to growing root vegetables such as potatoes and beets, which are, of course, immune to the virus, and raising pigs who can survive on a non-grass-based diet. And he's also fortified his farm to protect himself against the unwelcoming masses. And he's set up his own little sort of self-sufficient community here, which is invaluable for survival in the new post-apocalyptic order. So things go pear-shaped very quickly. And while John really should have acted sooner, once it becomes clear just how bad things are going in this country, he decides he needs to go to his brother's farm. He ventures out to David's farm to seek refuge from the world with a sustainable food supply and a chance for he and his family to rebuild their lives. And it's this journey from London to the farm that's the focus of this story. This is not just a simple trip up the motorway in the car, but a long and arduous trek across a violent and dangerous landscape. Along the way, he meets various people and he has to make strategic alliances in order to strengthen his group and defend themselves, while at the same time coming into conflict with various other groups of people who are also seeking food and shelter and security, all things which are hard to come by in this new, desperately uncertain world, this violent world. I won't go into any plot specifics here, but as you can imagine, this is a pretty dark and dystopian narrative, and there are some quite unpleasant episodes. So with the breakdown of government and law and order, surviving in this world becomes a matter of looking after yourself and your family above everything else, no matter what the cost. Civilization collapses, and it's scary just how rapidly and thoroughly this happens. In a world of vastly diminished resources, people are willing to kill in order to get their next meal. And this affects John and his wife just as much and just as profoundly as everyone else. And it's pretty shocking to witness just how his personality transforms to fit the mood of this new situation. So his respectable middle-class values get obliterated as he makes increasingly ruthless and cold-hearted decisions, actions which he justifies as necessary for protecting and feeding his family. While these are pretty horrifying to witness, he promises his wife that he hasn't really changed in his heart. He's still the same person, and that once they have settled down in the farm, they can go back to their usual selves, which seems pretty doubtful to me, considering the amount of trauma that they go through and some of the horrible things they have to do, or think they have to do. Anyway, I think John's character transformation is quite a compelling aspect to this book, and it works well as a kind of thought experiment to consider just how quickly society might revert to barbarism under these desperate conditions. But at the same time, once John's inhumanity rises to the surface, I kind of lost sympathy in his character and I became less invested in him. And the same applies to his wife and some of the other characters that they join up with. I'm not sure if the writer wanted us to sympathize with John or not, while he still ostensibly retains at least some of his humanity, or a little of it. But the moment he starts killing people unnecessarily or allowing people to be killed, this is where I just lost all sympathy for him. So I wasn't really emotionally invested in the main character. But that aside, the story itself is gripping, and it's a compelling and terrifying vision of just how such a devastating post-apocalyptic scenario might unfold. And so I can definitely recommend it. The writing is fast-paced, the drama is intense, and even with an unlikable protagonist and unlikable companions, it's nevertheless fascinating to watch their journey unfold. So I give The Death of Grass 4 stars. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.